This podcast is a quest for well-being, a quest for a meaningful life through the exploration of fundamental truth. Enlightening ideas, insights on physical, mental, and spiritual health. The inspiration is love. The aspiration is to awaken new ways of thinking that can lead us to a new way of being well. Welcome to Body, Mind, and Soul Healing Conversations.
Your psycho-spiritual emotional health is crucial to a successful divorce. Collaborative divorce is available both as a legal and a mindset process. Would you like an amicable divorce? Would your spouse be interested in an amicable divorce? Can you resist pressure from friends and family to handle divorce in a confrontational manner and stand up to their pressure? Is it important to you to maintain a functional relationship with your former spouse in the future? Considering collaborative divorce could be a good bet. If you're looking for a legal, respectful, and practical divorce process, making sense of your life during divorce is possible through collaborative divorce, an out-of-court dispute resolution model. Valeria interviews Nanci A. Smith, Esquire, the author of Untangling Your Marriage, A Guide to Collaborative Divorce. Nanci is an attorney licensed to practice in Vermont and New York. She is the chair of the Collaborative Divorce section of the Vermont Bar Association, a leader in her Collaborative Divorce Practice Group, and a member of the International Academy of Collaborative Professionals. She frequently writes and talks about divorce, family law, ethics, and collaborative divorce practices. She believes that a good divorce is possible when you show up for it with humility, compassion, and the correct support. Meet Nanci at nancysmithlaw.com. Here's the interview with Nanci A. Smith.
In your own words, who is Nanci A. Smith?
Well, thanks, Valeria. I ask myself that question every day when I wake up. Who am I and who do I think I am? So I'm a philosopher at heart, I think, and I'm a trained attorney by profession. And, I'm a daughter, I'm a mother, I'm a lawyer, I'm a seeker. I'm always looking for ways to expand my consciousness and my impact in the world.
Right. That sounds wonderful. And then you get me started with those spiritual kind of flavored questions. You say, I'm a seeker, and then you're looking to expand consciousness. There's something about this topic and the practice of whatever that is. So my question is, what is spirituality to you? Well, what are your spiritual practices at this time?
Sure. So I have a daily practice of meditation and connection to my sense of spirit. And I just want to try to be, as calm as possible. And I'm just learning at this stage of life, right? I'm 56. I just turned 56, and I've been a practicing lawyer for 30 years. My career was very important to me. My identity as a lawyer was very important to me. And throughout, at least for the last 15 years, I've been practicing, meditation and mindfulness, and just trying to be okay with who I am now and accept a lot of acceptance, a lot of surrender, and a lot of also balancing the footwork of what can I do today that will move, that will make me feel connected to others, to a sense of community, to a higher purpose. I've always been drawn to the philosophical, and I've always believed that the big questions matter. So I love these questions, and I'm happy to keep talking about them.
Yeah, thank you. The way you start answering that question with the word calm, which I often use peace or inner peace. To me, that would be at the beginning of the manifestation of what those spiritual truth can bring us in the sense of knowledge. Once you know the truth, then that's what happens. And then you become so much more calm. And then there's that component of acceptance, being in the moment. I noticed that there's a difference between the mind and what we call absolute consciousness, or who we are truly, the true self. There's a difference between them. It's very subtle, but it's not the same.
Yeah, I understand that.
Have you noticed that, Nanci, meditating?
Yes, I see that. And for me, my practice lately has been in more an embodiment and trying to just not be a brain, in a head walking on my shoulders through life. I'm really trying to feel things a little more. And part of my experience in my profession was a lot of disconnection, a lot of slight dissociation from like my true spirit, because I was like a gladiator in court, and it was a venue where I could express a certain aspect of myself. But as I got older, and I did more training in trauma, being more trauma informed, I just realized I want more alignment in my own self and in my clients and in my practice than I'm interested in the fragmentation of, dissent and sort of unproductive conflict management.
That's another beautiful message about bringing everything together, or seeing that everything is already connected, and not trying to live parts of life. It sounds like a practice, and from this perspective now, it still is. It's that practice of kind of removing what blocks us from seeing that connection, that inherent, like it's so obvious to me now in this moment. Like I'm talking to you is like talking to myself.
Right.
It's a lot of fun. But I know sometimes it gets lost, and then we just get pulled into the experience of separation, that I am this body only or the mind only. And that's it's another interesting dance, as I call it, because what can we do but just kind of move through it all?
Exactly. And sort of appreciate the paradox of it, right? Like I think of, it's paradoxical, collaborative divorce, because you need to come together to separate well.
Right. That's beautiful. Wow, I didn't think that way. Beautiful, beautifully said. Wow. Yeah, like I said off record, I never heard about collaborative divorce. That's the first time I heard the term. So how did you come to this concept, or this idea? I know it's legal, so it's something that it is established, but how did you come across this and chose to work with collaborative divorce, Nanci?
Well, so as these things happen, I was sitting in an office. I was a young associate. I was probably working, it was 2005. I had just come back from court, and I think I was probably not consciously, but feeling depleted, even though it was sort of energizing. There's a certain amount of adrenaline that happens when you're in there, in the courthouse. It's quite dramatic. And it was a dramatic day. And somebody, I think, called me a name. I think she called me a barracuda. And at the time, I felt very conflicted about it. On the one hand, I was slightly proud. On the other hand, I was just kind of like, oh, I don't want to be like an aggressive animal. And then somehow I learned about, literally it came in an email or something about collaborative divorce. There was a training about it, and it had started about 15 years before I heard about it. And so it's been around for about 30 years, and it's an evolving mindset and a process. And so when I heard about it, it just sounded like the most sensible approach. And I wondered, why aren't we all doing this? And so I started looking into it, and I created, we had a little practice group in Vermont. There were a couple of lawyers, maybe 2 or 3 of us that were interested in doing it. And over time it's built. And so now we have a practice group of about 13 people. It's an interdisciplinary group of professionals. So there's lawyers, there's mental health professionals, and there's financial neutrals. And we all work together as an interdisciplinary team to create a safe container so that a couple who are separating can do it with dignity and mutual respect and transparency and some compassion, and like basically have a separation ritual that conforms and aligns with their core values. And so once I heard about it, I was hooked.
Right. Yeah. So it sounds like a calling, doesn't it? It was calling you in
Yes.
a way.
Yes.
With that in mind, when I think about what does it feel to be called to do something, to act upon something, they actually call it inspired action, taking inspired actions. Yeah, I'm wondering if this is something that has been already a call, like from our entire life, in our entire life. How do you feel about this idea of calling, purpose, meaning? Is that something that happened in the moment, or it's something that has been there?
Whew. It's such a great question. I felt called into the law since I was very young. So I was one of these kids. I was about 7 or 8, and I'm like, I told my parents one day, I think I was like, there was bullying going on the playgrounds or something was going on. And also I grew up in Detroit in the 60s, and there was all the civil rights issues were going on. And I felt just very strongly about the injustices that were happening in the world. And I declared that I wanted, first I said I wanted to be a judge, which my parents were like, well, you have to be a lawyer first. I'm like, fine, I will. And then I just set myself on that path, and I didn't really deviate from it. I knew I could study philosophy in college because I knew eventually I'd be a lawyer. And so I felt pretty called to the law from a very young age. And I really didn't want to, I wanted to be able to advocate for people who couldn't speak for themselves and who could stand up to bullies. I just really had to think about bullies. And so I did it. And then the collaborative piece of it, I definitely felt called to do the book, to write the book, because I wanted people to understand that it was an option and that they could become more educated before they go interviewing divorce lawyers, because I really do think the power is in the people. And I feel like collaborative divorce is the best kept secret among family lawyers, because not all of us talk about it, and not all of us believe in the paradigm shift. Not all of us, support it. And so if you end up with a lawyer, and if your heart says you want to do it amicably and you'd like to do it collaboratively, and you like this idea of a team approach, but the first lawyer you go to doesn't understand what you're talking about, then you need to have the courage as the client to go to the next lawyer and to do the research and, read the book, or Google collaborative divorce lawyers near me and find one that is going to support you on your journey, because it's just another transition of
Right.
life, right?
Yes, it sounds very kind to me. I mean, also intelligent in a way, because it's so much energy spent, and almost unnecessary energy when we engage in kind of these very negative thoughts. It's energy draining. So it sounds really good to me, the whole process, in general. So I want to mention the book. You have written a book titled Untangling Your Marriage, A Guide to Collaborative Divorce. And I have a lot of questions here for you.
Oh, that's great.
About that. But before that, I want to ask you this question. What is your idea of love, or your understanding of love, and what are some of the misconceptions about love from your perspective, Nanci?
Oh my goodness, what a beautiful question. What do I know about love? I don't know. I could be kind of cynical and be like, I'm the divorce lawyer. Why are you asking about love?
All right.
Like I see love. I see
Yeah.
love in ruins every day. But that's actually
Yes.
not true. People, I think for me, love is that heart connection that we feel when we're connected to somebody. And we have all these notions of romantic love, and the English language, I don't think does a good job with how and sort of our Western culture, about what we expect from love. And we have all these romantic notions of love, and that one person is supposed to meet all of our needs forever. And we have these vows that seem so serious, and the culture supports that we're going to, have these wedding vows until death do us part. And now we live so long, having one primary relationship just doesn't even seem practical to me anymore. And so I have sort of I have my romantic nature, but I also have my practical side, which tells me, there's no shame in growing out of a relationship. And I believe that people come together at various times in their lives for various reasons. And there are also times when the relationship is no longer serving you. And so if you're in a marriage that is not serving you anymore, and you're not feeling at your highest and best self, then that might be the opportunity to have a conversation that maybe you're not bringing out the best in each other, which I would hope that love, would be where you are bringing out the best of each other. But that's hard. It's a I'm not married now. I was married for 22 years. And getting divorced was the hardest decision I ever made, but it was definitely the best one. It allowed me to really come to terms with who I am and how I want to walk in the world.
So speaking of your divorce, I was divorced twice too myself, and I never knew about collaborative divorce, but I think it was not necessary in my case. In your case, that was something that it happened naturally, or you had to kind of think about it. The question really is collaborative divorce for everyone and works in every case?
Well, clearly not, because it did not work in my case. And I didn't try to. I think my pain and my practicality, and I think I just didn't want to address the pain in the way that I think a collaborative divorce allows people the opportunity to truly grieve all of the losses that are happening. And by slowing down and having that emotional intelligence, I think when I was getting divorced, I just didn't have that capacity at the time. I had a 10-year-old, I had the business, I had too much going on, and I wanted to kind of put this painfulness into my rear view mirror. And so we did it in a different way. We didn't go to court, but I kind of put it all together and just kind of shoved it under his nose and said, here, sign this. And, gratefully he did. But I wasn't prepared to do a collaborative divorce, I don't think. And I don't think he was either. But which was sad and kind of something, that I regret not being able to do that. However, so it's not for everybody. So collaborative divorce is probably not if you've got active addiction issues, if you've got active untreated mental health issues, or you've got a personality disorder situation where you really cannot sit in the same room and the person is completely untrustworthy and you really cannot, you're just going to go around in circles. So those are the three main, and active domestic violence. If there's active domestic violence, that would be a problem because you have to feel safe enough to be able to sit in the room together. And you also have to trust your spouse enough that they're not going to, outright lie and engage in fraudulent behavior, really extremely fraudulent behavior. If that happens, then you need to go to court, and that's a good thing that court's available. But for the rest of us, who don't have that actual active problem going on, you could, even if it's painful and even if there's really difficult things to talk about, like infidelities or mental health issues or gambling or anything, like we really can deal with whatever is presenting itself. We take our clients as we find them, and we really strive to be open-minded and not judgmental, and just help them identify where their issues are, where they feel stuck, where they feel hopeful, where they feel concerned, and then just work with everybody to get to a level playing field where everybody ultimately feels psychologically ready to get divorced. And then at that point, then the lawyers, and the financial neutral, we all come together and we can start to generate ideas and options that will be good for everybody. So I would never present, for example, a settlement that I know is going to be insulting to my other lawyer on the other side and my client's spouse. I'm not going to start out lowballing. I'm not going to play games. We're not going to trick each other. We don't take advantage of mistakes. We talk about stuff. We also, as the container, we have to talk about ways that our clients and their dynamic might be trying to pull us into it. And so as the professionals, we can't allow ourselves to, fall into a marital trap.
Right. You become entangled with that as well. Wow. That sounds, it's almost like a work of a psychologist.
Definitely.
Right.
That's why we have the mental health professionals. They're usually PhD family systems counselors, and they understand divorce, they understand grief, they understand child development, and they are and family systems, and they really do educate us. And it is very psychological. I think if you look at divorce through the lens of grief, which is how I look at it now, I think it's very psychological, and I think it's 80% emotional, 10% legal, 10% financial. That's my little, that's how I see the chart. I see it 80% as emotional. I think the lawyers only get involved and become the star of the show when you go to court, because you need lawyers to manage and navigate through that system. But that adversarial system, I would suggest, is not necessarily conducive to emerging healthy and wholehearted instead of bitter and resentful.
Another question that I have for you, it's out of curiosity. I think I have read that somewhere, but I'll ask you, since you mentioned earlier, what is the connection between philosophy and law?
Oh boy. I'm sure there's treatises written about that
Yeah.
by actual philosophers. And I mean, there's theories of justice. There's, that's what comes to mind. I think probably what drew me in is larger concepts like justice and moral values like fairness and equity and integrity and just order. There's some sense of order that also appeals to me in the law, that we are, governed by some principles so that we can engage as a collective in a humane way, and that just how a civil society is going to run and operate, we need law and we want it to be just.
That makes a lot of sense to me. So it has that piece of personal worldview in a way that we adopt, and then from that we just kind of integrate that within the system, in your case and so many other professions out there, but it's still representing who you are, your belief systems. So that makes sense, and any belief system can become a philosophy or we can make theories out of them.
That's true.
That makes so much sense to me now. So another open question is about the main goal and intention for writing your book, Nanci, Untangling Your Marriage.
My intention was to educate the public so that they could intelligently and make informed decisions about how they want to separate. And I want to be part of the conversation to shift the paradigm of how we approach ending important relationships. And I just think that people don't know that there are other options. And I was, for 20 years, I've been struggling, and so have my colleagues across the country, to let this be known. And we write books for each other and we go to trainings for each other, but nobody that I saw had really written the book for the people. So I wrote the book for the people. It's not fancy. It's like my view on how to deal with your divorce lawyer and some, tips and practical ideas about collaborative divorce as an option. And even if you don't choose a collaborative divorce, you can still use the principles and the mindset, and do not allow your divorce to ruin you, because it could, but you have to have a certain degree of consciousness about going into this. And even if you're the one on the receiving end, it doesn't matter whether you're the one initiating or you're the one on the receiving end. It is going to be a grieving process. And I think you need to brace yourself for that so that you can then act accordingly. Because if you start acting cuckoo, people will understand. And because you'll be like, oh, it's just grief. And grief comes out in a lot of different ways. And I think if you would have more understanding, more compassion for your spouse, for yourself, for your children, if you could do it in a way that understood it from the lens of grief, and that you're going to go through the stages, sort of the Kubler-Ross stages of grief, and there's going to be denial. Denial can last for a long time. And I think once you come to a collaborative process, even though you both think that you want to get divorced and you both know it's the right thing to do, and you come to the first meeting, it's often very emotional because it's real. We're calling it, and we're going to go through this process and hold everybody through the deep emotional sort of transformation that takes place when you're letting go of a primary relationship. It's not easy.
It's definitely not easy. I love the way you connect this idea of grief, what it means for most of us, with divorce. Of course, it makes so much sense because it's losing. So it's not grief. It's not just about losing people we love or people close to us, but anything that has been perceived as a loss will cause us grief. It's been my own experience, of course, losing so many things. That makes so much sense. The more you use the word, the more it kind of becomes almost like this vivid idea of what that is. It's sadness. I mean, it's there's confusion too. It's definitely sad. Yeah.
And what I like to think about, and I tell clients, I say, divorce, sometimes I try to make a joke and I say, divorce is like a death in the family, except nobody's bringing you food.
Yes, right.
and
Yeah.
and the reason why it is like a little death,
Right.
first of all, when you start telling people about it, everybody wants to move away from you. They're all thinking it's contagious. Everyone's nobody knows how to really handle it. They're worried about the friendships. And I think what you end up losing, and what I try to explain to clients, is there's going to be a loss of, first of all, your best friend, your lover, your identity as a husband or a wife or a spouse in the culture, your status as a son-in-law or a daughter-in-law. You're going to lose half the time with your children, most likely. You're going to lose, somebody's going to move, so somebody's going to lose their housing. You're going to lose half of your wealth that you've accumulated during the marriage. And then you're going to lose potentially your identity, because if you were either the primary worker or you were the primary caregiver, either one of you are going to be changing your identities, because you can't usually sustain that completely after divorce. So somebody's going to shift and their identity is going to be challenged. And then the thing that really gets people right in the gut is this loss of the idea of what you thought you were creating.
Yeah. Wow,
right?
That's a big one. Yeah.
It's the biggest one. It's like, that's the one that crushes your soul. You're like, oh my God. And that's where I think the idea of somehow failure comes in, as if, sticking it out is somehow, being a martyr and sticking it out just for the children or for longevity purposes. It just doesn't serve us, because if it's not working, it's just not working. And it's not a failure. It's just an adjustment. Like, people grow in different ways at different times, and it doesn't have to be so shameful. That's really also why I wrote the book. Like, I just don't want there to be so much shame about it.
Right. What you said kind of made me reflect about kind of this idea that we are creating something as of this moment. Whatever we do, there's this expectation that something will come out of it. We're very attached to the things we do. Most of us,
yes,
especially in relationships. That's so true, Nanci. That's a big one. So that's the reason, it might be the reason why I choose to engage in spiritual practices, to deepen my sense of not detachment, but engagement without attachment. So fully engaged, but not attached. Yeah.
Yes, I think that is the practice, right? To be on, like, there is no path, right? It's just, you're just doing, you're
right.
being. And
right.
When we're in a collaborative divorce, we have an opportunity to come together to co-create, like, what the next phase of your life is going to look like in relation to your spouse. And it's very profound work. And there's a real opportunity to bring your best self to the table, even if you feel your worst. And I think that's another message that I really love about the collaborative model, is that we understand that you're feeling your worst. Like, nobody feels good about getting divorced, even if you're the one who's asking for it. But you're not going to feel great about it. So the question is, can you move beyond your feelings about not feeling great and still behave in a way that you can demonstrate resilience for your children who are watching you like a hawk, right? Can you demonstrate how to handle adversity and conflict in a way that is mutually respectful? And can you listen to learn? Can you be curious about somebody else's perspective? Or are you going to just persist with your own self-righteous, view of things and, point the finger and, blame your spouse for ruining your life? I mean, that's an option, but I would suggest that's not one that most people, if you really are given a little bit of space and time to reflect, which I think the people who are drawn to a collaborative model are going to be the type of people who are going to be drawn to the idea of, how can I use this for my best higher self and good for the future, the best way to do this for my children. And those folks will take the time to, work with their coach and set goals for themselves and set their intentions, and be willing to be called on if they start acting out in some way,
Yeah. Yeah, it sounds like, it really sounds like a spiritual work that you're doing.
Right?
I have to say, yes, it's kind of pointing this way of thinking, of seeing reality differently. That there's not just one way. So this is what's happening. What do you think is happening? But this is how you can also see it. There's a different light through which you can see the situation. So that's a spiritual, everything is spiritual to me. So
right.
I really love what you're doing, Nanci.
Thank you.
So I wonder if everyone knows about this option of collaborative divorce. Is that something that has been advertised? Of course, I'll be sharing with everyone in my community, but in general in the country, even in the world, is that something that most people know about?
No, this is the problem. That's why I
Right,
wrote the book,
right.
because hardly anybody knows about it. It's like, it's such a gift to each other. It's like the last good thing you can do for each other, is you're on your way out, like give each other the dignity of a decent divorce. And you will just be setting up, so much good karma or whatever you want to call it,
Yeah,
for down
yeah,
the road,
yeah.
plus setting the example for your children. And I just, truthfully, you're going to think this is silly, but I think that it leads to world peace. Like, I think world peace starts at home,
Yes,
and
yes.
you've got to pull yourself together, even if you're feeling pulled apart. And this is an opportunity to do the work so that you can really step into your future confidently with your best foot forward, and just feel like okay about yourself. Just feel okay about yourself, and that you're not going to get sort of mired down in the cultural baggage of, somehow being a failure because your marriage didn't work out.
Right. Yeah. Beautifully said, Nancy, about world peace. That's how it starts, of course, within. We are the
Right.
ones, one
Yeah.
by one. If we can all become peaceful, then that's what we'll get. We'll experience this reality very differently. We're almost at the end, and I have a lot of questions for you, technical questions. I have to ask this one for those who are going through, or thinking about divorce and going through the process even. What is the collaborative divorce process? I know there are 5 stages, so I would love to disclose that for the audience, Nancy.
Sure, great. So basically, you come together and you assemble a team, and you talk about your goals and your interests. So the team is the lawyers, the 2 collaboratively trained lawyers, and the audience should know, when you're looking for a collaborative lawyer, we often identify ourselves with this logo from it's called the International Academy of Collaborative Professionals, the IACP. And all of us use their branding, and that will tell the public that this lawyer has been collaboratively trained, because all of the lawyers have to go through at least a 2-day initial training, and then we have ongoing requirements to stay up to speed, best practices for negotiation. And so the lawyers usually assemble a team, and then we put together the mental health coach. In California, for example, they have 2 coaches. Some places have a 2-coach model, some places use 1 coach. And then we also find a financial neutral, who's usually a certified financial divorce analyst or a CPA or somebody very skilled in dealing with divorce and all of that. So we put together the team. We come together. We talk about our goals and interests. The clients really do a deep dive about what their hopes are, what brought them here, what's important to them, what are their concerns. We gather information. So at the same time that the couple might be working on communication or building accountability or rebuilding trust, because usually trust has kind of fallen by the wayside when people come to their divorce decision. They don't really trust each other. They're not communicating well. There's no accountability. Everybody feels like the other person's getting away with something. So we work through all that with the mental health coach. Meanwhile, the financial person is gathering and collecting and analyzing the financial data. The lawyers are here to be supportive for our clients if they have specific questions or need some guidance. And then once all the information is gathered, and once people feel psychologically ready to move to the next stage, and they understand the financial reality, because usually in a marriage, somebody is more facile with the numbers and has more experience running the household budget, and the other person doesn't. So we make sure that everybody's on the same playing field, and then we generate options and we evaluate the choices, and we look for win-win opportunities for everybody. And then people make decisions, and then the lawyers draft up the agreements, and then we file it with the court.
Yeah. It sounds simple in a way. I know it's not simple. It takes a team, right, to work all those details. So it's available in the country.
Yes.
Anyone who's looking to be divorced in a kind way, I would say, if I can translate differently or use a different word, then they look for a lawyer in their state that could represent them. Is that also possible to contact you for suggestions?
Yes, of course. You can always contact me, and I can do a consultation, and then I can help find professionals in your area. And usually it's by county. So you would look for a divorce lawyer, collaborative divorce lawyer near me. And if you just Google that, somebody's going to come up. And then you want to make sure that they actually do promote the collaborative model, because a lot of people say they do, but then they really don't. And you just want to make sure that they really are committed to it. And then you'll get that sense. Your clients, your listeners will get that sense from making a connection with the lawyer. And often the collaborative lawyers will usually not try to get a retainer from you right away. They're just going to want to have a conversation with you. They're going to want to hear where you're coming from. They're going to do an assessment, an honest assessment of whether you're good for this process, because we don't want to start one of these processes and then have it fail and have somebody withdraw, because there's a disqualification clause, which is part of the agreement, which says that if either of the clients don't want to do this anymore and they start the process, then the lawyers will withdraw from the process. We will not take our clients to court. So you can't play that game where you're going to hold something back if you're the lawyer and you're going to say, well, sure, I'll give it a try. I'll try to be collaborative, but if it doesn't work, I'll just go to court. And we don't get to do that. We say, we really trust this model. We can roll up our sleeves and get the work done. 98% of all cases settle, whether they're collaborative or whether you're in court. It's only the most challenging ones that end up, the 2% that end up in a full-blown litigation case. So we just try to manage, the expectations early, and like you said, it's a simple process, but it's not easy. It's like meditating.
Yeah. Right. That's it. Yeah, it's easy. It's very simple. It can be done, but it's not right. It takes commitment, doesn't it? It's our own commitment. So before we say goodbye for today, I want to mention in your book, I found a passage, a section that says self-care. And I love the way you write there. You say, what have you done for your self-care lately? ? And then you say, it is time to take care of yourself, whatever that means for you. So that's another kind of shifting. It almost shifts your perspective, because a lot of things we have this idea of what self-care is, but then there are so many ways we can do that. You give some suggestions, of course, even being around an animal, a pet, that is so healing, so wonderful. There's something else that caught my attention was in your book, you have at the end of each chapter, you have a section that reads thoughts to consider, and then thoughts to let go, and then practical tips. So that was thoughts to let go. That was almost like, to me, a very deep philosophical and spiritual practice. How many thoughts can we let go, especially the harsh ones, the unkind ones, the negative ones? Let go in a sense of paying attention to them, of understanding, listening. So I love how thoughtful you were, even by having that. And also, practical tip that caught my attention is where you say, I'm not sure where I found this, but in your book, but you said, surround yourself with people, places, and activities that bring you joy. You deserve it. I had a smile on my face when I read that. We own that to ourselves in a way. It goes back to that peace that we need to find the peace within. We need to become what we want to see out there. So that was the message for me. Your entire work is very spiritual. So thank you, Nanci.
Thank you so much for seeing that, Valeria. I really appreciate it. That's exactly it. You nailed it.
Yeah, isn't it? Thank you for being open to life and allowing yourself to do this, to kind of grow into the self that it never left you. That was always there, waiting for you, in a sense, which is not even waiting, it's here now. Before we say goodbye for today, I do have a few more questions. Would you like to add anything that you left unsaid, or read a passage in your book, Nanci, another passage?
Oh, my goodness. Okay, sure, I'll do a quick one. I just pulled it open. Page 79. It says, this is a good one, actually. Develop a shared narrative. Instead of insisting on your version of reality and trying to convince your spouse and everyone around you why you are right and they are wrong, try to raise your awareness about the language you use with your children and your spouse. In the collaborative model, one of the first steps we will help you with is how to start a conversation right away with your spouse, either directly or through the help of a mental health professional, to create and stick to a jointly authored narrative you can use to speak with your children, friends, and family about your decision to live in separate homes.
How do you define success these days? What is to be successful to you?
Oh, for me, success now is appreciating the gifts that I have. That's it. I really just want to appreciate all the gifts that I've been given, and I want to serve, and I want to be available to people. So I hope people find me. Like that's my growth edge. I have to trust that people will find me. The people who need the support will find me.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. You will be my community everywhere. That's what I thought about when I saw it. Like, wow, how many of us are probably thinking about this divorce and all that, but we don't know how to navigate that realm. So here we are. Yes, my community will know about you, Nanci. For years to come, I'll be resharing this information. What is one experience you wish to have before you lose the body, before you die?
Oh my goodness, Valeria. An experience. I think I'd like to be in love again. Right? I think I would. That's the only thing that can come to mind that is of significance that I don't already have. Because I've always felt, any day could be your last day. So you really do have to live it with the vigor that you've been given and use the tools that you have and have as positive an impact on the people around you that you can. So, I'm always kind of prepared to die, which not in a morbid way, but just like if it were to happen, I want to have lived a very complete and satisfying life. So I don't strive for a lot of other, new things to happen. But I think when you really boil it down, I think I do want to be in love again. I want to have that feeling more embodied, less intellectual, more embodied.
Yeah, I love that answer. That's one of the answers that most people give it to me when I ask them about experiences to wish other people to have before they die. Love is the first one for most people.
I think it's the most important one, right? That's our operating system. That's going to change the world. That is what's changing the world.
Yes. There's a billion times to that. And that vision. So I wish that for you too, Nanci. It's the interesting thing for me has been, it is wonderful to have somebody to love you, but we've got to love ourselves, though. That's where everything starts, really. That unconditional love for ourselves. I mean, I really mean unconditional. Yep. Then it's so much easier. Almost we attract a bunch of people that love themselves too. So that for me has been an interesting realization, because I always was looking for people to love me and all that. But now I know that love is here already in my own heart.
Exactly.
So before we say goodbye, I want to thank you again for your beautiful presence, for being genuine, for being open to life in the way you are, open to your own truth and to passing that wisdom on. It's really, really something that I appreciate deeply for some reason. So thank you so much, Nanci, for being you.
Oh, I'm humbled. Thank you for having me.
And then my ending technical question before we say goodbye for today. Where can we find more information about you, your books, products, services, and future projects?
Great, thanks. Yes, just Google Nanci Smith, and nancysmithlaw.com is my website. There's a spot about the book. The book is on Amazon, so you can just type in Untangling Your Marriage, A Guide to Collaborative Divorce, and that'll show up on Amazon. And yeah, people are welcome to just reach out to me, and I'm happy to consult wherever you are.
Wonderful. And I'll have the clickable link on your podcast profile for the book on Amazon and also your website.
Great.
Thank you so much again, Nanci, and we'll talk soon. Bye for now.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening. To learn more about Nanci A. Smith and her work, please visit nancysmithlaw.com.
To learn more about this podcast, please visit fitforjoy.org/podcast. Thank you again for listening, and bye for now.